Hi, this is She's Making Something, and I had a friend give me this little old dresser. It's beat up and in rough shape, but I love the cute detail work and it's the perfect size for my son's bedroom. So I took that dresser, patched it up, and transformed it into this super cute denim blue piece. It was quite an adventure. I'm not a professional furniture restorer at all, but keep watching and I'll take you step by step through my process. The first thing I had to do was pull out all the drawers and get a good look at what I was dealing with. It was clear this dresser had been through a lot. Some of the bottom pieces were loose, a few of the wooden runners were broken or completely missing, and some of the panels had been replaced and didn't quite match up with the rest. Honestly, it was worse than I thought, and I was starting to question if I could actually do anything with it. But then I reminded myself that my goal was not to fix it perfect, because I'm not trying to flip this dresser to sell for a profit. I just want to make it usable again. So I'm going to do quick patches, easy fixes, and it won't look brand new again, but it'll work for me. So after removing all the old loose drawer knobs, the first task was fixing that loose drawer bottom. So just using some hammer and nails, I tried to nail it back to the back panel. I did mess up a little and my nail poked out a little bit, but it's the back of the dresser, no one's going to see that anyway. Then I used some pre-mixed wood filler and tried to fill in all the cracks and holes. My hope was that this would not only help it from splitting apart further, but also add some extra strength and stability to the aging joints. This wood putty is really thick and it's kind of difficult to work with, but I ended up just using my fingers. I am not a professional. I was just winging it and trying to figure out what works. I do know that this wood fill is really easy to sand, so if I made a mistake or it was super messy, it'd be really easy to fix later. I did know ahead of time that I wanted to use drawer pulls instead of knobs, so I also used the wood filler to fill in the old holes. This way when I sand it down, it's a nice smooth final drawer front, and it's easier to put new handles on that instead of trying to stick them in the old holes and try to make that work. I could just drill new ones. I had to replace the missing runners on the bottom drawer, and luckily we had some square dowels that were the perfect height for one side of the drawer, and I could use two of them to get the width I needed. But because some sides of this drawer had been replaced previously, the other broken runner was a different height and I had to find a larger dowel to help patch that up. Luckily I found one, it was a perfect fit, and after a quick measurement I took them out to my new favorite toy to cut them. If you watched my previous videos like the tombstone one, you might know that the jigsaw is not my friend, but the miter saw and I are best buds. My husband had to really sell me on why he needed to buy yet another saw, but I may or may not have used it more than him since he bought it. I love that I can take my time to line it up just right, and then it cuts through smooth as butter. I stuck my new runners on with some wood glue and used some clamps to make sure it was as snug of a fit as I could get. I also looked over the dresser box and found a few loose pieces and joints that needed some extra glue to help it hold together. After the glue was dry, I filled in the spaces around the new runners with more wood putty, and also filled in any large scratches and dings I found on the box as well. Once that was all dry and set, I took the thing outside to sand it down. I used an orbital sander and 120 grit sandpaper. For the areas where there were more details and the orbital sander wasn't going to work, I just sanded by hand. I didn't want to completely remove the finish and sand it down to bare wood. I just wanted to scuff it up a little to help the paint adhere better. A lot of people are using chalk paint and milk paint and all these other things because they claim you don't have to sand, but I don't mind sanding. I find it very therapeutic. And since I'm using plain old regular paint, the sanding helps a lot to achieve a longer lasting finish. I wanted to make sure I sanded the wooden runners on the drawers and inside the box to help the drawers slide in and out a little more smoothly, especially with the new runners. I wiped everything down before I brought it back inside because nobody wants sawdust in their dining room. Usually a project like this would stay outside, but I've been taking my time with this project, doing it an hour here, an hour there, and since the weather has been rainy and muggy, I didn't want it sitting out for that long. After seeing it all sanded, I can tell why the distressed look was so popular. It looks pretty cool, but leaving it like this is not in the plan for this little dresser, so it's time to move on to the primer. Some people swear by using paint rollers and find it much easier and faster, but with all the edges and inside corners and details I was working with, it was easier for me just to do it all with a brush. The primer is dry, and it's time for the transformative paint. I'm using a 100% acrylic enamel because I know that has a more durable finish than some other latex paints, and it was safe for me to use indoors. I chose this beautiful blue from Behr called English Channel. It's not quite as dark as navy and has a more faded denim-like hue, which fit with the rest of the colors in our house. Because when my son outgrows this dresser, I plan on keeping it around to hold craft supplies or something. Again, I did not use a roller, just did it all with a brush. I made sure that my final strokes through the paint were long and smooth because even though the enamel will flatten out a little as it dries, some brush strokes will still be left behind, and I wanted it to look as good as I can manage. I chose to paint the insides of the drawers because even though they might not work 100% perfectly, I wanted them to look like they've got their act together at least. I didn't want to see an ugly inside of the drawer whenever I opened it to help my kid get dressed. I'm replacing the paper at the bottom with something new, and because I know I cannot cut straight, I make sure to paint around the edge in case some shows through. After the paint dries, I add a second coat to make sure it's fully covered, and then I let that sit for a few days to help it cure a little more before I add the handles. I found these white drawer pulls at Hobby Lobby while they were 50% off, which is a bonus. And I liked the slight antique look, and I hope it'll help the other nicks and dings on the dresser seem a little more intentional. Because these are not standard pulls, the screw holes were not the same distance apart on all of them, some of them off by 1/4 of an inch even, so I had to make my own templates to mark the screw placement. I lined up the edge of the tape with the middle of the handle and cut it off at the same length. Then I marked the location of the holes and labeled the tape and the handle so I could remember which template went with which handle. I did this for all 8 handles, so I had 8 templates to work with. Then I placed my templates with the edge of the tape that was the center of the handle with the center of my drawer and made sure they were all the same distance from the edge. If I did this right, then all of my handles will be centered on the drawers and equally spaced apart. I found a drill bit that was just larger than the screws, lined it up with my semicircle markings, took a deep breath, and made some new holes in the dresser. I found the handle that matched the template, added the screws that came with the handle, and slid it in place, giving a few good pushes to make sure it was flush with the wood. As each handle slid into place, I let out a sigh of relief that I didn't have to patch and re-drill any holes. Some washers and nuts, which also came with the handles, went on the back to hold them there tightly. And now the little dresser has some snazzy new handles and looking pretty good. But I'm not done yet. There's still a problem left to fix. And that's when I close the drawer, it keeps closing and sinks into the dresser box instead of staying flush. So I need to add some drawer stops. I took the scrap dowel from fixing the runner and cut 8 blocks, plus 2 extra because I lose things. I lined up the drawers to where I wanted them to stop and marked a line along the runner at the back of the drawer. Then I just used some wood glue and clamps to stick one of the little blocks just behind the line, so the drawer will have to stop where I want it to. In hindsight, I probably should have measured and cut longer blocks that reached from the line to the back of the dresser to give it more stopping power. And when one of these dinky things eventually breaks off, that's what I'll do to replace it. Time to finish off the drawers with some fresh paper, and I chose this peel and stick wallpaper because I liked the idea of it having some staying power on its own without the use of glue, but if things go horribly, it's easy to lift up, remove, and rearrange. Some measuring and cutting and dry fitting, and then cutting some more because I can't cut straight. But once it fits well enough, I just peel off the backing and then stick it on. It acted a lot like contact paper, which I use quite often, and was easy to pull up and reposition to fix any large bubbles, and then smoothing by hand or using a putty knife to help ease out the smaller bubbles and to get a more secure contact with the wood. The bottoms of the drawers are old and are uneven and bumpy, so I couldn't get it perfectly smooth, but it stayed put when I tried to slide it around. I am in love with the white barn wood look because I'm a fan of contrast, and I think it pairs beautifully with the blue and helps tie in the white handles. I was getting a little sad it was going to be hidden inside the drawers and under clothes, so I thought I might add some to the outside of the drawers and create a peekaboo effect. The very last thing I did was add some wax to the wooden runners. There are a few different ways to do this, like using actual furniture wax, but what worked best for me was to take a small basic candle and melt it down, and then use a paper towel or a rag to wipe the melted wax onto the runner. This let me add a smooth, even layer of wax without a lot of effort or money spent. I added the wax to the runners in the box, and also the runners on the drawers. Here's a reminder of what it looked like when I started this project. And there's the finished piece! I am in love with the blue and the white, and I think it looks perfect in my baby boy's bedroom. The whole thing took me about a month because I did it a little at a time, and I spent about $55 for the wood filler, paint, handles, and barnwood paper. I am so happy with the final result, and if you like it too, or want to see more of my projects, give me a like and a subscribe so you can be notified the next time I'm making something. Thanks for watching.